What's the most important part of your writing process?
I think it's probably kind of the early work that I do to set everything up. I use Scrivener as a software. I know there are some other options, but for me, that's the one I find works best. And I will use their character profiles, their location profiles, and I will especially do a deep dive into those characters and flesh them out. And I have certain sections on each character profile that I've added, like the curse words that they'll use. And, some characters are cursing up a storm and other characters are saying darn or, whatever. And I have kind of a variety of, I even mark filler words, for example, like some characters will say whereas other characters will say or something like that. And just kind of like all these little details, what drinks they order, things like that. And I want to get to a point where I feel like I have an answer to any question someone could ask me about this character. And when I do that, it's kind of like it's a pain in the beginning because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of, going through. I tend to pick like an actor or something that I visualize the character as, and I have photos of them and photos of kind of the style they'd wear, and I figure out, their ages and when they were born. And but once I've done that work, the writing is very natural. It's very easy. I don't have to feel like I'm making up things as I go along, so I don't have to come up with details when I get to the part where they go to a bar and someone orders a drink. I know what their drink is. I have that note. I can go right back to it and I just fill it in. And it becomes less of, it kind of creates a, what's the word? An assembly line of sorts, kind of an assembly line process where I put a lot of that initial work in creating a character and figuring out what they're like up front, so that when I'm doing the writing, I'm doing writing and I'm doing plot, and I am not focused on character details. I'm not focused on kind of every time I have to stop and come up with a new thing and like, oh, I have to come up with what they might wear. I can just I usually have two windows open and I've got one open and I'll see like, oh, here's some pre-picked out outfits that I already decided that they will wear. And I just, immediately put that in, and it really streamlines my process because then I'm able to focus on one thing at a time, and it's just the writing. It's not in that second coming up with all these different traits and things that I need to know. If I need to figure out the layout of the bar or whatever, I've done that ahead of time, so I don't need to stop what I'm doing, completely interrupt the process, and then come back and try to pick up where I left off. I can just really quickly have that information on hand. And at least for me, having that kind of those different chunks of what I'm working on at a time, it's so much easier to focus and so much more natural. I've done books in the past where I didn't do that. And it's just you're constantly interrupting yourself. It's constantly like, oh, I have to stop. Oh, I have to do this other thing. Oh, I have to figure this out. Oh, I didn't do this yet. And it just really drags down my productivity, but it also, I think, messes with my ability to tell a really good story if I'm not focused solely on the storytelling in that moment.
So sort of similar to when you can read something and not know the characters' names, but by the dialogue you would know. If you know this person's drinking a shot of Jack Daniels and this person's having a lemon drop, I know that it's definitely these two people. Like, it's very clear who your characters are.
Yeah, and I've really worked at that, and I wasn't sure how much that was going to translate and how much the readers were going to see it, but I get constant comments all the time where, before if I've had a character show up in a series and they come back, and I'll just describe someone, at the bar or something, someone will go like, oh, I know them, they're like, I know who that's gonna be. Or, I'll describe like, oh, they're walking down the street and they see this person. And I was like, oh my God, I know who that is. There's enough detail that I've given the readers that now they're right there with me. They know exactly what's coming. They recognize people from brief descriptions. Like one of my characters, I brought back in a series, and I just described him from a new character's perspective as kind of looking like a golden retriever, if a person were a golden retriever. And I've never used that description of that character before. And everyone in the comments went, oh, we know who that is, we love him. And they were instantly like with me because I had done enough of that background work that that's all I had to say. I'd never used this phrase to describe this character before, but it was enough all around that they were able to immediately get the shorthand, immediately get what I was going for. And a lot of times, they will say things like, oh, I know exactly what he would do in that situation, or like, oh, we all know what he's going to say now, kind of thing, because that background work is effective and it is making them as familiar with the characters as I am.
And so you say Scrivener is what you use to sort of organize things. Do they do screenplays too, or is it just all?
Yeah, they do. They do a bit of everything. I know they have kind of, it's a very loose structure, and it gives you a lot of functionality for if you want to change things, if you want to make things specific to your process. It's very, very customizable, which I really like. But they have this system where you can export as any kind of file. So you can export it as a particular style of script. You can, customize exactly how you want the script printed, sort of thing, or you can export as a book. You have all these options, and it'll do that formatting at the end, which I think is really nice.
So you're using the notes function or something like that on your phone, and then you take it and put it in Scrivener? And
I often I have those loose pieces on my phone, and then I will just when I have a moment and I'm working on it on my computer, I will go in and I will kind of copy over the relevant stuff, put it in a little more neat format so that I feel like I can actually look at it and know what I'm talking about and find it when I need to find it. And then it's in Scrivener, and they have a notes section, and they'll have places for photos, for maps, whatever you need. And I really like that functionality because I use so many different things. I was talking about how I'll figure out the layout of a place. I will do that. I will draw a map and figure out, here's where the door is, here's where things are for any kind of big, places that I'm going to be using frequently, or that I know there's going to be a big scene there and I want those details. And then I will just have that available in the sidebar, and just click, it opens in a side window, and I can look at it and I can be like, okay, that would make sense, and work things out. And it's very multimedia friendly, and just the customizability is really high. I think there's a learning curve because of that, because there are so many options. But when you figure out what works for you, I really like all the options that they have and the functionality they offer.
And do you always do sort of this vision board for your characters?
Generally, yeah. I think I started out that way because I just was looking into how do people tend to start, and a lot of people have character sheets and things like that. And so I was okay, I'll kind of start with something like that and figure it out. And I've found that as I write, I kind of know the things that I'm going to need. The drink order is kind of a silly one, but it's something that comes up a lot because you'll have people at restaurants, you'll have people at bars, especially in romance, they'll be going out dancing or something like that. And these little bits of information are so helpful. And I'm also a very visual thinker. So a lot of times if I can just see them, if I can just oh, this is kind of the person I have in mind, I can kind of look at the individual and be what do they like? What do they do? It's kind of the people watching in a sense, where I can look at this image of a person or several images of an actor or someone interesting that I found and be okay, yeah, what would they like? What would they think? And having that easy back and forth between a lot of the visual stuff that I rely on and my my writing, and just being able to kind of do that simultaneously, it really works for my brain.
Is there almost a color palette for that person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if everyone does that. I do that. I tend to kind of make a color palette for my people. These are their favorite colors. These are what they like. And I have some characters that oh, they're really into every color. But at the same time, they're probably not going to show up in gray or beige or something like that. But there are characters that I'm like, they have like 4 colors. That's what they wear. That's what they do, you know, because for whatever reason, they're a, you know, particular person, or, you know, they like to keep everything simple in their life, or whatever kind of reason I have at the time for thinking that they would be limited in that way.
Sure. There's been studies that they've said like super successful people, Steve Jobs being one of them, different people have wearing the same outfit.
Yeah.
For the, you know, it's like their signature outfit. And so, yeah, that's...
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of, you know, especially the like straight male characters, I tend to give them more of a limited color palette, because I think a lot of straight men tend to think more in that fashion of like, you know, utility. I want things that go together. I have a blue thing, I'll get another blue thing, great. And, you know, whereas I have some of my more, you know, outlandish queer male characters, and it's like, oh, he's got like every color and every pattern, and, you know, he's wearing metallics, and his, you know, buttons are down to here, and, you know, he's like, I always kind of like imagine certain characters like, oh, they've probably got like a feather boa lying around somewhere, right, or something like really over the top. But like, I think that color palette can also kind of tell you something about them. And I think if you look in anyone's closet, there's a color palette there. You know, there are things that we lean towards. There, you know, like I know some people who like, they have one color and they wear one color and that's what they do. And then like me, I've got a bit of an explosion. It's a bit of everything, you know, but I've also got a lot of bright yellow. I'm sure anytime I see something bright yellow, I'm like, what is that? That's interesting. You know, bright pink. I'm like, ooh. You know, I'll immediately, you know, find it on the rack and check it out, sort of thing.